Here's the sign. Here's the sign that was out in front of the Masonic Temple grounds on the old Haywood property. And on September 23rd, 1967, construction was started on the new Ipswich Masonic Temple. Art Ricker and his bulldozers tackled it right about where the original Haywood house stood. It's a property of about 8 acres, and it was decided that there needed to be a meeting place for Ipswich Masons for their next June meeting because their lease expired on the second floor of the Tyler Building in downtown Ipswich. There go all those beautiful bushes. Those were lilac bushes. And the dozers started to dig down in. There's Charlie with James, the clerk of the works, talking things over to Jim Tedford. And they started to dig the hole for the foundation for the dining hall. And the hole kept getting deeper and deeper, and the pile kept getting higher and higher. And here's the foundation on the rear side, viewed from the rear side, of the dining hall, with the utility rooms to the left and the ground dug out for the foundation for the A-frame on the left. All of this happened in October 1967. The foundation was made with a cup at the top to take on the Flexicor slabs that were now being poured in Connecticut. These slab sections formed the floor for the dining hall. And they were dug for the footing for the A-frames. And there's past master Bob Leet breaking off the bars, and Henry Raby behind him stripping the bars. Nick Marcus assisting Charlie with James is sighting in on the levels, and everybody admiring all the work that's going on. Of course, once you get the bars out of the way, you need to put the black asphalt on. There's at that time, the master of masons in Ipswich, Henry Raby, putting the blacktop on, and there's the beam right across the basement that holds up the span, the center of the span of the Flexicore slabs, is the rear entrance to the basement. You can see the beam being held up as the crane moves in to lift off the Flexicore slabs. That was John T. Clogston on the right, and that's me, Harris Penniman, in the red hat. Fellas gotta wear some protection. These things weigh about 2 tons apiece. These slabs. And there we're starting to swing the first one into place. The trucks brought these slabs up from Connecticut specifically for unloading them this Saturday morning in October. Of course, you got to remember, everybody smoked in them days, so you're going to see a lot of fellas smoking cigarettes. We tried to look like we knew what we were doing. And there the slab fits in the cup in the concrete on the left and rests on top of the beam, the I-beam that spans the basement. There's John T. Clogston handling one end. And this is the last of the Flexicore slabs. It just slid right down in the hole. And John T. just gave it a kick and it dropped in. What followed now was mixing some slush concrete and filling in all the cracks. There's Jim Tedford, chairman of the building committee, and a man that called the shots on the building during all its construction. He was the boss. Construction started on this dining hall. We weren't sure how the weather was going to be ahead, and if, as a last resort, we could use this dining hall as a meeting place next June when the lease expired for the existing Masonic apartments in the Tyler building in downtown Ipswich. The idea was to close in the dining hall and the service area, boiler room and chimneys, and then proceed with the A-frame. The A-frames and the planking were due from Washington State any day now. They came in by freight. However, the temperature dropped in New England that winter, went below 32 and stayed that way throughout the fall, the end of the fall and winter. And yes, we had snow. But the A-frame lumber and beams had not yet arrived. However, we had managed to put in the footings for the A-frame section. Jim Tedford came up with the idea of these spanning struts over the area where the floor for the A-frames could be poured. And then you put the plastic over it. Actually, this is one half of the A-frame section. And that floor could be poured with plastic over those beams, the struts that Jim had made, and salamanders inside to keep the frost out. And here we have it closed in for the first pouring of the floor, half of the floor, sighting in on the level. This is what it looked like inside the plastic area, establishing the floor portion of one half of the A-frame section. This is inside the plastic enclosure. And now we have the boards and batten going up on the rear and the windows going in the dining hall section. This is a salamander. There were two of those that kept the frost out of the ground so we could pour. And behind Nick Marcus, you'll see the chimney has different colored bricks, which we got wholesale and used them because that section of the chimney is covered up when the connection between the A-frame and the dining hall is completed. Nobody ever sees those different colored bricks. There's Henry Raby, Nick Marcus doing their Saturday morning inspection, how things are going. That's me, looking like I know what I'm doing. There's the boards and batten on the front of the dining hall. And the A-frame section cross beams are moved to make the next pour. The concrete on the first pour has hardened and can take the cold weather now. Those salamanders ran about 12 hours on a tank full, and it fell upon Nick Marcus and me to come there at 3 o'clock in the morning to refill them, keep them going throughout the 24-hour period. And it was cold those nights. Now there's a footing for the A-frame leg down the corner of the building. Just give you an idea of the size of it and how they lined up. The window is now in at the front of the dining hall. The beams and the planking had arrived from Washington State. These are the big A-frame beams that now had to be put together. They were laid out and cut to fit and trimmed in bunches of 4. These are the 3-piece planks that went up and down the sides of the A-frame. They're now positioned and made up 4 of the A-frames to lift up in place. The tree at the back of the hall was left in position specifically so that we could tie the first A-frame onto it, keep it from falling away from the tree. And this is the first A-frame been put in position. Now we're swinging the second A-frame into position, lifting it up with the feet in approximate place. Whoop, whoop, whoop. It goes pretty far, but then it held. The crane and the men that were putting it together knew what they were doing. They dropped the feet into the shoes and then put up some cross bracing. That's two. And still the weather stayed cold and the snow fell, and this was the first 4 A-frames up in position. And now we have the other 4 A-frames in position, all lined up in a row. Now it's time to start putting the planks on. The inside of the dining hall was being worked on. This was a less cold place to work. These are the struts of the trusses up top on the dining hall. And now the horizontal beam in the front of the library, just inside the door, was put in a position and tightened up. And the planking started on the sides. We breathed a sigh of relief that these A-frames stayed in position, did not collapse like a deck of cards. So we got some of that A-frame siding put on. These 3-piece planks were tongue and grooved on ends and in the fore and the back end and fit together so that the planking joints would hold in the middle and didn't necessarily have to be fastened at the end at the A-frames. And still we battled the snow. But now the interim between the A-frame and the dining hall is coming together. This was the boiler furnace down below and the men's and women's restrooms. This is the inside of the A-frame as you see it today. We designed beams in the front and rear A-frames because of the wind loading and the concern for these large sections bowing in and out with the wind. Shingles went on as fast as we could get them on. They had a special carrier called Lightning that took the bales of shingles right up the side of the wall. Now it was time to close in the end of the A-frames and the service area, the boards and batten, and the windows. Looking across the street, there the face of the A-frame front door starts making its appearance. Took a lot of scaffolding. This is the rear end of the building with the rear door, the end of the hall, the Masonic Hall. And there's a 32 double D brass up there. Somehow those fellows are working hard on things. Chimney at the rear of the dining hall going together. Face of the front with the windows and the shakes going together. Gotta close this thing in, get some heat in there. Now the face of the front is, the rear is finished off, and here's the face of the front of the A-frames. And now we got to put the front door in and a little covering over it. The midsection, the utilities, is going in. And we're starting to put the wallboard on the dining hall, and the heating system is going in, as well as the electrics that were installed as the building progressed. Excellent job by the electrical contractor. Here's the existing worshipful master. 1967, Henry Raby, 1968 by now. Midsection is closed in, the front door is closed in. We're starting to get heat throughout the whole inside of the building. And it's warm enough for Ray Barrows, the accounting manager for the building committee, to be one of the work teams on Saturday that did so much work to make the building a success. Leveling out the front section of which is now the parking area, entrance area. And it's getting on near June, must be about May 1968. They're leveling out the roadway in front and around the building. Gonna lay some asphalt down, could cut a new exit driveway. And this is the big day, the day for the cornerstone laying. And the day for the big march from the old Masonic apartments up to the new Ipswich Masonic Temple. This was June 1st, 1968, and here's the parade from downtown Ipswich. The band, the past masters, the existing officers of the Ipswich Masonic Group, the Ipswich Masons. Some of them even marched in step, and the De Malay boys. Parade is coming up at the top of the hill by the railroad tracks at what was the Pachillas store at the corner. Here we have the past masters again coming into the railroad track section, and arm comes down. The band made it, but lo and behold, here comes a train right through the middle of the big parade. But undaunted, the Masons marched on up Topsfield Road to the new Ipswich Masonic Temple. The band stopped in front of the building, and the past masters marched in. And the Grand Master Masons of Massachusetts was there to lay the cornerstone. But under the cornerstone, we have a stainless steel box with a lid that's holding several of the papers of that day that gets placed in a cavity under the cornerstone right at the right side front of the entrance door. And the Grand Master Mason laid the mortar to set the cornerstone in position. And then the stone is held by the masters and lowered in 3 distinct movements. 1, 2, 3, into position. And the final mortar is laid. So then, time to celebrate. Here we have